guys, welcome back to the People in Progress podcast, where we talk all things lifestyle, self-improvement and how to live your best life. I'm your host Elsa, and this is episode 3 in the Dream Life series. This episode is going to be all about living intentionally and living in alignment with your values, and also how to discover what your values actually are. The last 2 episodes were about self-discovery and how that is the crucial first step in how to live your dream life. You don't have to listen to these episodes before you listen to this episode. This episode is still going to be really important and it'll make sense without those other 2. However, I do recommend listening to them if you can, not necessarily before, but doing the exercises we spoke about in that episode. They're all about discovering what you actually want and discovering what you want your dream life to be. It's really good to listen to that before this, but remember, you can download this episode, you can save this episode for later, and so you don't have to stop it right now and go watch those. But it's a series, it's good to listen to all together. Blah 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 blah, they'll be linked in the show notes. But if this is your first time tuning into the Dream Life series, I have them all marked on the podcast as they say like Dream Life series at the end of the title. And if you're watching on YouTube, or if you want to watch the series on YouTube, I have the podcast as a playlist, but I also have a separate Dream Life series playlist on my YouTube channel. So it is a series all about how to actually live and achieve your dream life. But yeah, enough rambling, let's get into it. I have a couple segments, but I'm going to keep it short so we can get into this episode. So first of all, what is progressing my life? I think I've been leaning into cycle syncing a lot more, where if you don't know what that is, it's basically researching your hormonal cycle and seeing how you can do certain exercise or certain work or eat certain foods at different points in the month to line up with your hormonal cycle. I'm like, oh, the world isn't ending, I'm just in a certain phase, or I feel so much better because I'm in this phase. And it's just really interesting doing more research on it. I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to talk a ton about it, but it is very interesting. But what is holding me back? I have to say, sleeping in too much. I've been going to sleep very late, and then obviously that trickles on and I wake up very late. And I was in a really good routine of not doing this during summer and part of September, and I need to get back into it because I know I feel so much better when I do wake up early. And as for updates, I have more of a podcast update than a life update this episode, and that is that the pod is going on break for December. And now, chill out, calm down. It's not because I'm like stopping the podcast. And I know I've had this before where people start a podcast and I really like it, and then especially if it's like a newer podcast, often they might go on break for a bit or hiatus, and it's like they never come back. And don't worry, that's not going to happen. I'm going on break for December because posting on YouTube and TikTok and doing video content for December is really important to me. I have tons of really, really cool stuff planned. And for me, I'm watching more videos and stuff like that during December because I'm not, especially for podcasts like this, like self-improvement podcasts, I'm not in that mindset yet, or I am, but like I'm busy, I have family visiting, I have all these social events. But for me, where I'm really into self-improvement content is obviously January with the new year, and when things calm down a bit and I want to get into living my dream life and progressing with People in Progress. Obviously, I'm rambling. But basically, we are going on break for December so I can focus on the more, aesthetic, fun content, and then we are going to come back with a bang in January and do tons of self-improvement, New Year guides, and People in Progress stuff. So I'm not announcing anything now, but I think there is going to be maybe like a bit of a series or more posting on the podcast in January, so don't worry, we will be back with a bang. And if you are missing me in December, can I recommend my TikTok, where I will be posting vlogs, Christmassy content about Canada, and particularly about Ottawa. And then also on YouTube, we're going to have tons of cozy wintry vlogs, end of year and Christmas content. Anyway, let's get into the main body of this episode. Okay, so I just want to reiterate that it can be really overwhelming hearing all this information and feeling like you have to keep pausing it and taking notes. So if you're driving, or if you're cleaning, or if you're just playing this in the background and you're not in a space where you can literally take notes and write all this stuff down, I totally understand, because I am the same. Because sometimes I'm in the mood to basically listen to a podcast like a lecture and write everything down and really absorb the information. And sometimes I just want something motivating on while I'm doing my morning routine. So you can do 2 things. 1, you can save this episode for later, appreciate it now, absorb it now, and then come back and actually like do the things later. You can download this episode, which I highly recommend. When the Dream Life series is done, which is going to be in the new year, I have about 3 more episodes of this planned. I'm going to be coming out with a workbook on my Etsy, which you can buy and download, and it will have all the content in a perfect little workbook, in a guide, written down so you don't have to take any notes. So if you just want to appreciate this now, maybe do 1 or 2 of the exercises. Just remember, if you keep watching the series, the workbook will be coming out at the end of the series. And also, if you did watch episodes 1 and 2 of the series, you will know that I spoke about the self-discovery workbook. But thank you so much for being patient with me. It has been a long time coming, but it is finally out now. And that is basically like a little sneak peek at the bigger workbook. It is just a workbook for all the self-discovery stuff in episodes 1 and 2, a guide to the crucial first step of living your dream life. And you can get it for free because you're a People in Progress listener, of course, because I love you guys. If you leave a rate or review on the podcast, just take a screenshot and DM it to the People in Progress podcast Instagram, which is linked in the show notes, or is literally just at People in Progress podcast. So if you rate, take a screenshot, DM it to the podcast, I will send you the workbook for free because I love you guys and thank you for watching. Anyway, if you don't want to do that, it's also on Etsy. And all of that rambling is just to say, don't feel stressed out with all the information. It'll be there in other ways if you want to listen to it, or you can just re-watch this episode. But let's start off. Okay. But what are your values? To live in alignment with your values, to live intentionally, we need to start by defining and figuring out what your values are. Values are basically the things that you find most important in life, and they are the things that guide the way you live. And now, there aren't right and wrong values. You may appreciate some more than others. You might not see why other people value things that they do, but they are just different ways of seeing the world. But how do you know what your values are? Some values include, I'm just reading them off my screen, love, generosity, sustainability, well-being, excellence, faith, freedom, calmness, and community. But there are hundreds more. But there are so many. How do you know what yours are? Like I said, this is crucial to figure out because you want to live in alignment with your values to live your dream life. Episodes 1 and 2 are all about self-discovery, so if you've done any of that work, you already should know a lot more about yourself, and you might know a lot more about what you want. So you can look back at exercises you might have already done, or you could do these exercises for the first time. The ones I recommend for values are the What Were 3 Moments Where You Felt Happy exercise, which was from episode 1 in the Dream Life series, or episode 10 on People in Progress. And then also the What Does a Fulfilling Life Look Like exercise, which is from episode 2 of the Dream Life series and episode 11 of People in Progress. But there are some other exercises you can do right now, and what I want you to do, if you're doing these, write down 3 moments where you felt satisfied. This is really similar to the write down 3 moments where you felt happy. It's just a different emotion we're looking at. So just free write about these 3 different moments. Do more, do less if you feel like you need to. Whatever comes to you naturally. You want to go through and you want to reread over them and pull out common themes. Then you want to do the same, but write about 3 moments where you felt unsatisfied. Another thing you could journal about is write about the things that make you really angry. What makes you upset in the world? What makes you the most angry because people don't get it, but you clearly value this thing a lot. And so, like I said, go through these bits of writing and pull out themes. And what you can do is, I have tons of links in the show notes that are really good further reading if you're interested in this topic. I think there's about 3 or 4 links, so it's not too overwhelming. But some of them have lists of values. And you can just Google this as well. Google a list of values and read through them and see which ones align with the content you've written or which ones call out to you. And then when you've come up with this list, you want to go through the themes and values and see if you can prioritize them. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it will just help you figure out which ones are your top values. So once you get to this point, once you know your values or you have a slightly better idea of them, you can make sure that your actions and your habits and your routines, your exterior matches your interior, your hopes and your dreams. And your values, obviously. But how do you live in alignment with your values? You do this through living intentionally. Why is this important? Starting off, first of all, is self-alienation. And I spoke about this in episode 1 of the Dream Life series, when I was talking about why self-discovery is important. And this is the same thing. Basically, living out of alignment can lead to this thing called self-alienation. And this is basically the feeling of feeling distant and disconnected from your actions or your environment or the world around you. This can be because of a lot of things. It is often a result of much deeper issues, but I think a really key reason it can be is because you're feeling out of control of your life. You're feeling like you're just not in it, and living intentionally, being intentional, slowing down can really, really help fix this. Living intentionally and in alignment with your values can also boost your confidence. It gives you a sense of ownership, like you're in control of your life, and also it gives you confidence in your choices, so it makes decision making easier. If you have more data, it is easy to make a decision about something. So collecting what your values are, learning more about yourself, is basically getting more data on yourself. Therefore, you can be more decisive in decision making and making important choices in your life, and even just little ones in your everyday routine. Making decisions based on your values also helps remove some elements of stress and regret. Living intentionally can also make you more motivated because you are tapping into your internal motivation. Your values basically become something that is guiding you through life, and it means you are more motivated because you are going in a direction that is fulfilling to you. It also helps you live more in the moment because living intentionally really prioritizes being present and being grateful in the current moment. And it also goes hand in hand with this because it reduces stress and it can reduce worrying. And like I said, it can reduce some element of regrets. Okay, but you might be asking, how do I do this? So here are the clear steps to start living in alignment with your values that you have just discovered and to start living intentionally. First of all, you want to ask yourself why. Get to the root of things. Why are you buying this thing? Why are you doing this activity? Why are you making this choice? Why are you hanging out with certain people? Why do you like this certain thing? And now it doesn't have to be a negative. You don't have to be knocking yourself down and realizing everything you've been doing is wrong. You might just be looking at like why you like something, why you like hanging out with someone, and you're kind of getting to the root and seeing how it aligns with your values. You basically want to look at the purpose of your actions and see either how it aligns with your values or how it might not align with your values, so you can re-evaluate it. So talking about evaluating, you want to evaluate your lifestyle, and there's a few ways you can do this. You want to look at how you're spending your time, and you can do this through journaling, through a reflective look at how you're spending your time, whether that's weekly journaling or daily journaling or bullet journaling, which is what I do, because I'm basically writing down every single thing I do every day, and I have been doing this for years. It's a really good way to look at how I'm spending my time. Also, looking at time blocking and seeing how much time you're spending on each activity is a really good way to look at this. You can also just sort of do a bit of a log and record what you do after you do it in your days or your weeks or your months. And again, like I said, looking at your calendar, you're basically already doing this. Another cool little hack to evaluate your time is to look at the screen time on your phone, because it tells you how long you're spending on different apps, and you might be able to evaluate your time by seeing what apps you're spending more time with. So once you've evaluated and looked at your time for a while, look closely and identify times where you might not be living in alignment with your values, because your habits and your routine make up your life, and you want your life to be aligned with your values. So for example, if one of your values is hard work, but you look at your screen time and you see in the mornings you wake up and go on Instagram for an hour, is that in alignment with your values? If one of your key values is creativity, how much time are you actually spending dedicated towards being creative? Where can you make more time for creativity in your routine? And what things might you be doing that's taking away from your creativity, like doom scrolling? If one of your key values is community, how much time are you spending with people you care about? What time are you dedicating in your life to building or supporting a community? Where can you allocate more time to being part of a community? So the next step is to continue to be reflective and to track things. So looking to dedicating time to doing things that align with our core values. We all have things we have to do in our life, whether they align with our values or whether they don't. Whether that's certain things you have to do at school or at work or just in your daily routine, whether it's chores or things you promise to do for other people. So we all have these things we have to do, and we do, But what can you add consistently that does align with your values? Make it something you have to do for yourself. If you think of your core values, say you have 5 core values, say one of them is friendship and one of them is love and one of them is creativity. You don't have to go on a date, hang out with friends and paint a painting every single day. But it is worth tracking them so you can see if you're doing them consistently throughout your weeks or throughout your months. So maybe it is 1 date night a week or 1 date night a month, or maybe it's checking in with your friends once a week and making sure you actually do that consistently for the people you care about. Or if one of your values is success, this is going back to what we spoke about in episode 2 of the series, which is episode 11 of People in Progress overall. If you look at how you define success, maybe track 3 times a week if you're doing something that goes towards that. And if you want to know more about tracking your goals, how to do this, why it's important, and the key to making sure you achieve your goals, and we get into tracking and all that kind of stuff, I spoke about that a ton in my gamified goals episode, which is episode 14. So the next thing you want to do is to set goals that align with your values. I've spoken about this earlier in manifestation episodes and also earlier in this Dream Life series. You need to look at why you want to do things and make sure you're not accidentally striving towards someone else's idea of success or a dream life. But if you're listening to this episode, if you've done any of the exercises about self-discovery or discovering your values, you're already like 90% of the way there, because you're striving to look for what is important to you and not what is important to other people. There's some things you can do to do this after you've done these exercises, figuring out what you actually want, is to 1, create a vision board to visualize what a dream life looks like for you, and to work on setting goals that are directly in line with your values. And if you want to hear more about goal setting, I highly recommend, like I said earlier, checking out episode 14, which is my gamified goals episode. The next thing you want to do is to set some boundaries. If you've discovered more about yourself, if you've discovered more about your values, then you might know some things you don't want to do. So you need to be clear and communicate with people about those things that you might be changing or that you just don't want to do anymore. Don't be a pushover and don't do things that don't align with you. And now, of course, we want to be flexible. If your key value is like health, then that doesn't mean you can't go out with friends and eat pizza. That doesn't mean you can't have like a relaxing movie night and not go for a run. It just means that maybe someone's consistently knocking you down about something you want to do, you're setting a boundary where you're not going to let that happen. But again, like I said, you need to be flexible. That's part of balance and enjoying life, but just keep your values in mind. But also be prepared to do things alone, because everyone has their own personal values and things you're working towards, and just because someone doesn't want to do something with you doesn't mean you need to cut them out or get rid of them, or they don't align with your life so you can't hang out with them. Understand that everyone's working towards their own thing and you need to as well. You can't wait for other people to do things with you. You need to be prepared to live your dream life, to do things alone and do them for you. Another tip to living in alignment and living intentionally is to be aware of how you spend your money. Like I've said, looking at your values will make decision making easier. Obviously, we make decisions every time we spend money, and so you want to be aware of where your money is going. Don't waste it on things that don't serve you and don't align with your values. For example, a key value of like friendship and socializing in community, they might be willing to spend more money on going out and going to parties or going to drinks or going to events. If your values don't lie in that area, then maybe you don't want to spend so much money there. For example, like I really value like home and, you know, a sense of homeliness. And so buying things for the home that make my home comfortable and beautiful and great to be in are like worth it for me. So things are worth it for different people, and certain things aren't worth it for different people. And just because it's not worth it for you doesn't mean it's not worth it for another person, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to think of some things I buy that might not be worth it for other people but are worth it for me. And some examples are my Instant Pot. Jake and I really value like I said, home stuff, and we value cooking, and we value that quality time and being able to make stuff from scratch. So an Instant Pot might not be worth it for someone who's not really into cooking, but for us it is so worth it. Also books. I really value reading, I value creativity, and I value doing those kind of hobbies, but if you're just doing it for like the aesthetic, then maybe it's not worth it. Or if you're just getting into it but it's not one of your key values, then it might be more worth getting like a Kindle or reading ebooks online. But for me, buying a ton of books, like I read a ton of books, so it's worth it. But like if I was buying runners, I don't run, so that's not worth it. Another thing is I'm really into journaling and being reflective and like creativity, like I said, drawing. And so I know a lot of people have issues where they buy too many journals and they don't use them, but I buy a lot of journals and I have so many from over the years I've collected, but I use them, so it's worth it for me. And my last tip for living intentionally and living in alignment with your values is to be aware with who you surround yourself with and what you surround yourself with. I really want to recommend episode 13 of People in Progress, which is all about consuming media mindfully and how to make social media good for you, because social media is a big part of what we surround ourselves with. And if you want a full guide on how to make social media good for you, how to clear out your social media, how to make sure you're surrounding yourself with positive, inspiring social media, check out that episode. And again, I will have all the episodes I've mentioned linked in the show notes. But who and what you surround yourself with can be in so many different areas of your life. It can be with what's in your house, what's in your closet, who you're spending time with at school, at work, who are your friends, who are you texting, who are you following, even like what is on your desk, what is filling your cupboards. So you can't always pick who you're around, whether you're in public or whether you're at work or school. There are going to be people, there are going to be things that you can't control. But what I'm saying is when you do get to choose something, when you're in those moments like your morning routine or your night routine or you're at home or you're on social media, these are all moments where you are choosing what you surround yourself with, and this is where you can be intentional with it. So in terms of who you spend time around, just be a bit reflective and see how these people make you feel. Do they make you feel drained or do they make you feel energized? And again, reflect on your values. And again, people don't have to be perfect. I'm not saying cut people out, and remember that everyone has their own values. Everyone's working towards their own thing, and you might share some values with people, but you don't have to share all your values with people to be friends with them. But just be reflective on how people make you feel. And again, going back to the boundaries, tip I mentioned a little bit ago, you can always set boundaries with people. Since you're being aware of all these things, who and what you're surrounding yourself with, what you need to do, the last tip is to declutter your life. And this is all areas. This is your digital space, your closet, your habits, your social circle, your house, your mind. Declutter everything, but do it with your values in mind. And this doesn't have to be a right now, do it today kind of thing. This is just a slow, like over time, when you're buying stuff or when you're throwing stuff out, or when you're choosing what to do, or if you're going through your emails or blah 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 blah, all these things. Just when you're getting rid of stuff or trying to declutter, do it with your values in mind. Okay, that was a super educational, lots of information kind of episode, but I really hope you guys did like it. And I just want to remind you that the Self-Discovery Workbook is out now on Etsy. It'll be linked in the show notes, and that is a total guide on how to figure out what you want, who you are, and what you value, and therefore how you can live your best life. And that goes along with episodes 1 and 2 of this series. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you so much for listening and watching. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, it is uploaded to my YouTube channel, Elsa Moira, and if you like me, you might like my content on there, and all my other socials are linked always in the show notes. Thank you again so much for listening, and I will see you guys next week.